Finally, let's talk about these specific statements: break, continue, and pass. I kind of showed you an example of the break statement within an infinite while loop, but let's take a closer look at these three statements and also the nested loop. At least one example of a nested loop, which is basically simply loop within loops, loop within loop, or multiple loops within a loop. So let's start with the break statement. As we saw before, the break statement is basically used to break the most inner loop execution. So you can have some sort of break statement in your program to kind of break the process if certain condition is met. Now this could be using the break keyword like what we did before here for a previous example, or it could just be simply a return statement within your function, so you're breaking the loop. Here's an example of the second scenario, which is breaking with a return statement in your function. So I call the function find first even. It goes through a loop for num in numbers. The number is an input, is sequence, and if the number is an even number, it returns the number, otherwise it returns none. And it goes through this for loop until it gets to the end of the sequence. If there is no even number, if there is no even number, it returns none. If there is any, it returns that, and then it breaks the for loop because we put a return there within the function. All right. So if I do find first even, and then a list of 1, 3, 5, 4, 7, let's say, if I run that, I will get 4, right? So 4 would be the first even number, goes through, it gets to 4, and then it basically breaks from there. The second one is continue, and for that I'll bring this simple example, which basically called skip odds. Now this function goes through all the items in an input sequence, and then if the number basically the remainder is 0 when divided by 2 is not 0, we continue and append the number to some empty list that we defined within the function, basically keeping a record of all the numbers, and if this condition is true, we continue. If it's not, then all we do is just return. So let me do some skip odds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll see the behavior of this function, print there, and then I'll just run that. This gives me 2 and 4. So it starts with 1. For num in numbers, that would be 1. So if 1 remainder of 1 divided by 2 is not 0, so we continue. Right? So we go to the top. We get the second number 2. 2 is in numbers. If 2 is the remainder is not 0, we continue, but it is 0, so we actually append. Right? Then go to 3. The remainder is not 0, so we continue. We don't do this part. We just go back to the beginning of the loop. 3. The remainder of 4, the remainder is 0, so we don't really execute this, continue, so we append that to the list. And then 5, remainder is not 0, so we continue, go back to the beginning. That's basically the end of the for loop, and we return the result. So we see how continue statement this statement prevents whatever is happening in or for loop after that. So instead of a break that is basically unlike break that we break out of the loop, we continue, we just skip whatever comes after. Hopefully that makes sense. Now we do have this other statement pass, and you see that very frequently, especially sometimes when I give you an exercise or some kind of assignment, I just use pass. The pass statement is mainly used as a placeholder for let's say future code. If you want to add to your function, let's say you're writing the general structure of your code, and at that moment you don't want to stop and refine the specific set of commands that need to be executed if a certain condition is true, and you want to just make the function work for now and come back and add your future code. And here is an example just to give you a general sense. Let's say I wrote this function, I'm writing this function, process numbers, right? I get to here, I set a condition if num is smaller than 0, and then I just put a pass there, as I put as a state comment, is a placeholder for future code, else print num. Alright, so if I run this, and I will actually be able to run this code without any error, -3, let's say 4. Just because I put that pass there, so whenever number is smaller than 0, it passes, nothing happens, it passes, else it prints the number, and later on I can actually change this and put whatever I want to put to be applied when this condition is true.